There was a casserole on my porch. That's how I knew she was back. Not a call, not a knock, not even a note. Just a steaming hot broccoli casserole, left like a curse on my welcome mat. I stood there barefoot, in my sleep pants, staring at it like it might explode. It was wrapped in foil like she used to do, edges crimped just right, no corners sticking out. Same brand of glass dish too. I knew because she took all of them when she left. Every single one. 15 years. No contact. No birthday texts. Not even a petty email. She didn't just divorce me, she vanished. Like I was an unpaid internship on her resume. And now, this thing shows up like it's supposed to mean something? I looked up and scanned the street like a paranoid squirrel. My neighbor, Jerry, gave me a nod from across the way. He's always watching me since the incident. We'll get there. I didn't touch the dish. Instead, I sat back down in my kitchen, stared at the flickering fluorescent light above the sink, and whispered, "Not this. Not again. You see, I know what this is. This is her move. This is classic Calla. Show up with something warm and homemade. Pretend the past never happened, and act like we're just two people who took a really long nap. But here's the thing. I'm not the same guy she left. I've lost hair, gained weight, started talking to my microwave like it's a roommate. I keep a spreadsheet of my emotional breakdowns and rate them by severity and soundtrack. Last month's Q3 Spiral featured Coldplay and 3 broken mugs. So yeah, I'm not okay. But I wasn't born pathetic. She made me this way. Or at least, she was the starting gun in that race. Let me rewind. Not to our love story, you don't need that, but to the moment it all started to rot. She had just graduated. Top of her class. Wore that smug little grin like she already knew the ending. I remember the night she told me she got the job offer out west. We were eating leftover lasagna. She didn't even look at me when she said, "I think we need to grow separately." I thought she meant like a plant metaphor. But no, she literally meant apart. As in, you stay here and rot, while I go save lives and forget your birthday. She left a week later with 3 suitcases, my dignity, and, ironically, the cat she hated. And now here I am, talking to strangers online, staring at a cursed casserole like it's a live grenade. I don't know what she wants. I don't know why now. But I swear to God, if she thinks I'm just going to warm this thing up and sit across from her like we're in some sad indie film, she's got another thing coming. Probably. I didn't touch the casserole for 2 days. I left it on the porch like roadkill. Let it sit there under the October sky, absorbing dew and judgment from the neighborhood cats. Every time I walked past the front window, I half expected it to be gone. Like maybe she'd realize how weird it was and sneak back to take it. But no, it sat there, mocking me, smelling like nostalgia and betrayal. On the 3rd morning, I opened the door, picked it up with 2 fingers like a dead rat, and shoved it into the fridge without unwrapping it. Out of sight, but not out of mind. I knew what was coming next. Calla never just appeared. She orchestrated, always 10 moves ahead. The casserole was her version of tapping the glass before she cracked it. I just didn't know what she was planning to break. That night, I got the letter. It wasn't in the mailbox. It was taped to my front door like some kind of cult recruitment flyer. Cream-colored envelope, familiar handwriting. Even after 15 years, my stomach still did that flip when I saw her cursive. It made me sick, like muscle memory from a nightmare. The letter wasn't long. Just 4 sentences. Finch, I know I have no right to ask for your time, but I need it. I'll be at Miller's Hill tomorrow, 6 p.m. No pressure, just questions. No apology. No explanation. Just an invitation to Miller's Hill, the place where we used to go when we wanted to scream at the world. It overlooked the entire valley, and on quiet nights, you could hear the trains way out near the state line. She used to say the sound of distant trains made her feel like there was still movement in life, even when we were stuck. I sat at the kitchen table all night rereading that letter. The fridge hummed like a threat behind me. The casserole was in there, just waiting. I thought about throwing it out, but part of me wanted to test it for poison, just in case. Kidding. Kind of. And here's where you're probably wondering. Finch, why even go? Why give her the time of day? And you'd be right to ask. But the truth is, I'm weak. I'm curious. I'm cracked open in places that never healed right. And more than anything, I wanted to know why now. Why after all these years of silence and cowardice, did she crawl back into my life like a ghost carrying a casserole? So yeah, I went. I drove up to Miller's Hill in my dented Civic, parked behind the old Ranger gate, and sat there for 20 minutes rehearsing what I'd say. I had lines ready. Bitter ones. Clever ones. Did you run out of husbands or casseroles? Was my opener of choice. She showed up late, of course. Calla always had this way of entering a moment like she was the main character in a movie everyone else forgot they were in. She wore a long coat, black boots, and had a thermos in her hand like this was some Hallmark reunion instead of an emotional car crash. She didn't say hello. She just stood next to me at the edge of the hill, looked out into the valley, and said, "You still come here?" I answered without turning. Only when I'm reminded I make terrible life choices. She smiled like that was fair. Then she opened the thermos, poured 2 cups, and offered me one. I didn't take it. "You poisoned the casserole yet?" I asked. She laughed, genuinely, like I hadn't been a scar on her story for the last decade and a half. "You didn't eat it? Would you?" She paused. "No." We stood in silence for a while, letting the air wrap around us. It was cold, but not enough to bite. More like it was nudging me to pay attention. Finally, she said, "I'm not here to fix anything. I just need to tell you what happened." That's when I noticed her hands were shaking. Not the kind of shaking you fake when you want sympathy. The kind that starts at the bones and works its way out. "There's something I never told you," she said. "Back then, when I left, it wasn't just about the job." Of course it wasn't. It never is. She looked at me, eyes glistening in the dark like she had secrets hidden behind each tear. "I was pregnant." I didn't say anything, because my mouth stopped working. She took a breath like she was drowning in it. "And you weren't the father." She said it like she was placing a glass figurine on a ledge, carefully, but still expecting it to fall and shatter. "I was pregnant, and you weren't the father." That sentence sliced through 15 years of silence like it was paper. I didn't react right away. I didn't even breathe, I think. I just stared out at the lights of the town blinking in the distance, pretending I hadn't heard her say the most violent thing anyone's ever said to me without raising their voice. Calla didn't explain at first. She just let the words dangle in the air like they belonged to someone else. Maybe that's what she wanted, to float it out there like a balloon and watch me chase after it. But I didn't. I stood still, arms folded, fingers clawing into my sleeves. The cold had nothing on what I felt inside. I eventually muttered something like, "You came all this way to admit you cheated?" But no, of course not. That would have been too easy. She shook her head, almost offended, and said, "It wasn't like that. And I swear, if I had $1 for every time someone said that right before wrecking someone's soul, I'd own the hill we were standing on." She started pacing, like she was trying to outrun her own story. "It happened right before I graduated. You were working double shifts. I was barely sleeping. I met someone during my clinicals. He was complicated. Married. We weren't serious. I didn't even know I was pregnant until a month after I moved to Rochester." She looked at me like she was waiting for a firestorm, like I'd start screaming or throw something or break into a Shakespearean monologue of betrayal. But I couldn't. I felt nothing. Or maybe I felt everything at once and my body chose shut down instead. "So you got pregnant with someone else's kid," I finally said. "And instead of telling me like a human being, you ghosted me and sent the divorce papers like a bank notice?" Her voice dropped. She didn't even defend herself, which scared me more than anything. "I didn't think you'd survive it, Finch. And I didn't want you to have to." "Survive what?" I almost asked it out loud. But then she answered anyway. "I lost the baby. 7 months in. Car accident. I was in the passenger seat. She paused, looked at her hands. He was driving. Fell asleep at the wheel. We went into a ravine. There was a scar on her wrist I hadn't noticed before. Thin, pale, wrapped halfway up like a vine. I lost the baby. I lost him. I lost everything. And by the time I woke up in the hospital, I realized I'd already lost you too." I wanted to say something cruel. I wanted to tell her she didn't lose me. She threw me away like a pair of old shoes she didn't want to pack. But I didn't. Because as much as I hated her in that moment, I hated the part of me that still felt sorry for her even more. She looked up, eyes glassy and hollow. "I've lived with it every day. I've watched you from a distance, online, mostly. I saw the house, the shop, the cat. Noodles is still alive?" I didn't answer. And then last week, I found out something that made me realize I had to come back. She took a step closer, and for the first time in the entire conversation, I felt something new in her. Fear. Real, shaking, soul-deep fear. He had a brother, Finch. The man from back then. And now he's looking for me. I stared at her, stunned. Looking for you? Why? She whispered the answer like it was cursed. Because there's something I never told him. Something I told no one. Not even the hospital. The baby might not have been his. It took me a few seconds to process what she'd just said. Maybe longer. That sentence, the one about the baby possibly being mine, landed like a pipe to the knees. Calla stood there, silent, like she'd just lobbed a grenade, and was waiting to see which limb it blew off first. My jaw tightened, my hands curled into fists, but I didn't move. I couldn't. I was stuck between reality and rage, teetering like a man on a plank who suddenly remembered he couldn't swim. Are you saying? I started, then stopped. My throat dried up before I could finish. She nodded, eyes fixed on the dirt between us. I never got a paternity test. I was too scared, too far along when I found out. The timeline, it was messy. I kept telling myself it was his, but there was always this voice, quiet and mean, whispering that it might have been yours. I laughed. Not the kind of laugh you give when something's funny. It was the kind you cough out when your brain runs out of other ways to react. So let me get this straight. You left, ghosted me, raised someone else's child. Almost. And 15 years later, you're back because some possibly vengeful maybe uncle wants answers? Calla winced. It's not like that. I'm not here to dump this on you. I don't feel safe. And I didn't know who else to go to. The audacity nearly knocked me over. 15 years of nothing. No birthday texts, no apologies, not even a passive-aggressive Christmas card. And now she wanted to fall back into my world like it was some emergency shelter. I should have told her to leave. I should have told her to take her ghost stories and casserole and disappear again. But I didn't. Because somewhere beneath all the anger and dust and broken history, something awful had started to twist in my gut. Hope. Not the romantic kind. Not the fairy tale garbage. No, this was worse. This was the kind of hope that comes when you've been so lonely for so long that even a storm feels like company. I looked at her again, really looked, and realized just how shaken she was. Her coat sleeves were frayed, her shoes muddy, and she kept glancing over her shoulder like she expected headlights to rise out of the dark woods at any moment. This wasn't a performance. She was rattled, and I knew Calla well enough to know she didn't rattle easily. I leaned back against the fence and sighed. You think this guy, this brother, is coming here? She hesitated. He's unpredictable, quiet, the kind that doesn't knock. I thought he'd moved on after the funeral. But last week, he sent me a message. No return address. Just a photo. She pulled it from her coat pocket and handed it to me. It was grainy, printed on cheap paper. But I knew what it was. My house. My front porch. Taken from across the street at night. Just far enough away that you wouldn't notice someone standing there unless you knew to look. I stared at it for a long time, feeling something thick crawl up my spine and settle under my skin. He's watching me? I think he's watching both of us. I dropped the photo like it burned. Suddenly, the casserole in the fridge felt radioactive. Was that just a guilt offering? Or was it a breadcrumb? A trap? Something worse? What does he want? I asked. Her voice cracked for the first time since she got here. He thinks I lied. About everything. He thinks I destroyed his family. And if he finds out the baby might not been his brother's. She didn't finish. She didn't have to. We both stood there, in the dim flicker of my car's dying headlights, as the wind rolled over the hill like a warning. I wasn't sure who I hated more in that moment. Calla, for dragging me back into this twisted fallout, or myself, for not telling her to get the hell off my property. But I didn't send her away. Because deep down, something told me this wasn't about closure. This was a warning. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. I tried. I lay on the couch in the living room with the TV humming static and the hallway light on like that would keep the past from walking through the front door. Calla stayed in the spare room, what used to be my storage closet before she turned my life inside out again. I didn't ask if she needed anything. I didn't want to play host. But I also didn't want her wandering around the house in the dark. She already knew where everything was. That was the worst part. Even after 15 years, her muscle memory never left. I heard her open the cabinet under the sink, grab the old wool blanket I kept balled up for emergencies. I heard the creak of the floorboard outside the bathroom, the small click of her toothbrush tapping the edge of the sink. She moved like she belonged here. That made my skin crawl. Sometime around 3 a.m., I gave up on pretending to sleep and walked out to the garage. It's the one place in the house that still feels like mine. Half-finished projects, rusty tools, an old clock radio that only plays one station and lies about the time. I sat down at the workbench and stared at the back wall, where I used to pin sketches and random scribbles on corkboard. Now it was just clutter, blueprints that never became anything, receipts I forgot to throw away, and a single yellow sticky note with my handwriting on it that said, "Fix what you can, burn the rest." I didn't remember writing that. I stood up, needing to move, needing to distract my brain before it spiraled into places I couldn't come back from. That's when I noticed the back door to the garage, the one that opens to the alley behind the house, was unlocked. I never leave that door unlocked. Not since 2013, when some teenagers broke in and stole a box of old radio parts, and, for reasons unknown, my entire drawer of batteries. I locked that door religiously after that. It's one of those heavy-duty deadbolts, too. You have to really mean it to get it open. But now, it hung slightly ajar. Just an inch. My stomach dropped. I grabbed the closest thing I could use as a weapon, an aluminum flashlight with half its battery left, and crept toward the door. I listened. Nothing. No wind. No leaves. No footsteps. But something in the air felt wrong. Off-kilter. The way it feels when you come home and know someone's touched your stuff, even though everything looks the same. I pulled the door open and stepped outside into the alley. Moonlight painted everything in silver, and the cold hit me in the chest like a dare. Trash bins lined the back fence. The neighbor's motion light flicked on, then off again. No movement. No sound. But when I turned around to go back in, I saw it. A small symbol carved into the wood of the garage door, just above the handle. It hadn't been there before. I would have noticed. It was deliberate, almost surgical. A circle with a sharp vertical line cutting through the center, like some twisted version of a peace sign. Fresh, clean edges. Someone made it that night. And not just for fun. Someone left a message. I didn't know what it meant, but something primal in my brain did. It wasn't just a symbol, it was a signature. A marker. A warning. Or a promise. I slammed the door, locked it twice, and backed away until my spine hit the opposite wall. That's when I heard the sound. Not inside. Not in the alley. Above. The faintest creak from the attic hatch. I hadn't been up there in years. I stared at the ceiling, throat tight, every inch of my body screaming not to move. But curiosity, that old demon, always wins with me. I grabbed the stepladder, unfolded it beneath the hatch, and pulled the string. Dust fell first, then cold air, then silence. I climbed up slowly, flashlight trembling in my hand, and poked my head into the attic crawlspace. It smelled like insulation and old regrets. But it was empty. At least, mostly. In the far corner, near the vent, something caught the light. A glint of metal. I crawled over and found it. A camera. Not mine. Not anything I'd ever seen before. Mounted, hidden in the beam, angled perfectly toward the garage workspace. It wasn't streaming. It was recording. Whoever installed it didn't want to watch me in real time. They wanted to study me later. I yanked it off the beam, heart racing, and nearly fell off the ladder getting down. Back in the kitchen, Calla was already awake. She stood at the table, holding her phone, eyes wide. She didn't ask about the camera in my hand, because she already knew. "He's not watching me, Finch," she whispered. "He's watching you." And that's when I realized this wasn't about her past anymore. This wasn't about guilt or closure or a dead baby that may or may not have been mine. This was about me. And I had no idea why. I didn't ask Calla how she knew he was watching me. I didn't want to hear it from her mouth. I already saw it with my own eyes. The camera was real. The symbol on the door was real. And the part of my brain that used to think this was just a messy reconnection between two broken people had now completely shut up and gone into hiding. This wasn't about love. This wasn't even about betrayal anymore. This was a setup. And I was in the middle of it. I placed the camera gently on the kitchen table. It wasn't one of those cheap Amazon plastic types, either. This thing was high-grade, matte black, almost military in how cleanly it was designed. No branding, no serial number, just a single port on the side and a microSD card barely sticking out. I didn't touch it right away. I just stared at it, like it might explode or start talking or say my name out loud. Calla hovered nearby, pale and small, like she was trying to blend into the wallpaper. "I found it in the attic," I finally said, my voice low, pointed straight at my workspace. She closed her eyes slowly, like she'd been bracing for this. I didn't know he'd already started. Started what, exactly? I snapped, louder than I meant to. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like someone's been treating my life like a TV show and I missed the pilot episode. She didn't respond. Just looked away. That was her move. Always had been. When things got too real, she'd disappear into silence like it was a warm coat. I took the SD card out and plugged it into my old laptop, the one I used to back up clients' files and watch conspiracy videos when I can't sleep. The file popped up immediately. Just one. Playback 0037. MP4. That number told me something important. This wasn't the first file. There had been others. Dozens, maybe. And I had no idea how many more were out there. I clicked on it. The screen went black for 3 seconds, then blinked to life. There I was, standing in my garage. 2 nights ago. The footage was clear, better than 1080p. It had night vision enabled, so everything had this eerie green tint, and my face looked like it belonged to someone who'd already died and hadn't figured it out yet. I was working on an old ham radio I'd found at a yard sale, muttering to myself like usual, rewinding a wire, completely unaware I was being watched. The timestamp in the corner read 12:41 a.m. Then the camera panned slightly. I didn't move it. I was still on the other side of the room, crouched over the bench, but the footage suddenly shifted to show the window above my work table. And that's when I saw it. A face. In the reflection. Not mine. Not Callus. Someone outside. Standing perfectly still. Watching. Just the faint outline of their head, barely visible in the reflection, but unmistakable once you noticed it. Pale, featureless. As if they were wearing something, some kind of mask. The kind that erases identity. Not for disguise, but for removal. Like whoever they were, they didn't want to be seen. Not even by the camera they placed. The figure stood there for nearly 4 minutes. Then it vanished. Not walked away. Not turned. Just gone. The camera didn't shake. There were no footsteps. No door creaked open. Nothing moved. One frame, they were there. The next, they weren't. I paused the video and slammed the laptop shut. I don't want to know what this is, I said, breath caught in my chest. I don't care about the past, or your ex, or your dead maybe baby. But this is now Calla. And you brought it to my door. She didn't argue, didn't protest. Instead, she reached into her bag and pulled out a second SD card, slid it across the table toward me like a bribe she never wanted to give. I took this from his apartment, she said. The day I left. I stared at her. You went to his apartment? Before I came here. I had to know what he knew. And Finch, she hesitated, biting her lip so hard it went white. He had a wall, covered in notes. Photos. Of you. Not me. Just you. I swallowed hard. What was written on the wall? I asked. Her answer was a whisper. It said, he doesn't remember. Over and over again. I didn't want to see what was on the second card. I already felt like my grip on reality was hanging by a string, and now she was handing me scissors. But the moment Calla slid it across the table, her hand trembling slightly, her nails bitten down to the quick, I knew I was going to look. Because that's the curse of curiosity, right? You can pretend you're too tired, too wise, too jaded. But if someone tells you there's a version of your life you don't remember, something rotting just beneath the surface, you look. You always look. I slid the card into the laptop. Another single file. No name this time. Just a string of numbers, no extension. Whoever saved this didn't want it to be found, at least not by accident. I renamed the file and forced it open with a media player. It started like a home movie. Grainy, handheld, shaky. Someone filming through a cracked doorway. Inside the room, me. Younger. Definitely me, but younger than I should have been in this context. Late teens, maybe early 20s. Sitting at a table, laughing. Eating cereal out of a mixing bowl. Calla was there too, but she looked different. Her hair was shorter, her clothes out of style, and her posture wasn't like I remembered it. She looked tense, like she was performing happiness, not living it. But here's the thing. I have no memory of this day. Not 1 second. I paused the video, heart pounding, and looked over at her. What is this? When was this filmed? She didn't meet my eyes. I don't know. I thought it was old footage from before we met, but it's not. I've never seen that room before. Never owned those clothes. Finch, she stopped herself. That's not me. She was right. On closer look, the smile was wrong. The eyes were wrong. It was like someone wearing her face. Every detail slightly off, like a painting done from memory by someone who never actually knew her. And the me in the video? I was acting like I didn't know I was being filmed. But then, at the 6-minute mark, I turned and looked straight into the camera. Not a glance. A stare. Like I knew someone was watching. Like I was watching. Suddenly, the video jumped. Static. White noise. Then another clip. This time, the setting was my garage. Not as it is now, but how it looked before the renovations, before I added the second workbench, before I installed the new cabinets. The walls were the old, chipped green, and there was a calendar on the far wall from 2007. I was sitting at the bench, staring, unmoving, eyes open, not blinking. And behind me, was the same masked figure from the reflection in the first video, standing close, closer than before, almost touching me. Only this time, I wasn't reacting. I just sat there, like a puppet with cut strings. The figure raised something in its hand, a small black object. I couldn't make it out. Then the footage cut again. Next scene, a hospital hallway. Empty. Then, a child's bedroom. Clean. Too clean. Like no one had ever actually lived there. Then, darkness. A slow, crawling kind of dark. Faint breathing. Maybe mine. Or not. I slammed the laptop shut. My hands were shaking. My throat was tight. Calla finally spoke. This is what he collects. Not just video. Not just surveillance. Memories. Or versions of them. I think. God, I know how this sounds, but I think he's been editing our lives. I stood up too fast. The chair scraped across the floor like a scream. You're saying this is fake? I'm saying it's worse. I think it's real, but not ours. Or maybe not just ours. I started pacing. I couldn't sit anymore. My skin itched like I'd walked through poison ivy. I felt like I needed to peel myself out of my own body just to breathe. He doesn't just want answers, Finch, she continued. He wants control. He wants to know why your memory is different from the file. Then, quieter, almost to herself, and he's willing to unmake you to find out. I stopped cold. Unmake me? What does that mean? She didn't answer, but the look in her eyes told me that whatever it meant, it had already begun. And maybe it started long before she left. Maybe the truth wasn't that she abandoned me. Maybe the truth was I forgot she ever tried to stay. The thing about unraveling is that you expect it to happen all at once. You imagine the big breakdown, a scream in the mirror, a flipped table, a full collapse. But it's quieter than that. It's slower. The unraveling is a whisper, not a bang. And that's how it happened to me. Sitting in my own kitchen, watching footage of a life that was mine and not mine, surrounded by a woman I loved and hated, and being hunted by a man I'd never met but somehow always feared. After everything, I thought the final chapter would end in fire or violence or something cinematic. But it didn't. It ended with a letter. The next morning, I found it under my garage door, slipped through like an apology. No envelope. Just a single sheet of paper, yellowed, with my name handwritten on the top in block letters. It read, "This was never meant for you. You were just the cleanest slate, the most intact. We didn't think you'd dig. We didn't think you'd survive what came after. But you did. And now the cycle is broken. There will be no more footage. No more edits. The memory you have now, it's real. It's yours. Whatever comes next, Finch, make it count." That was it. No threats. No signature. Just a quiet, almost respectful goodbye from someone, or something, that had been pulling strings for longer than I could imagine. I looked over at Calla, still half asleep on the couch, curled up like a child. She'd stayed. She could have left in the night, run off like before, but she didn't. And that mattered more than I wanted to admit. We spent the next day walking through town, talking, slowly, awkwardly, like two people who shared the same book but remembered different endings. I didn't forgive her that day. Not fully, but I stopped hating her. And that was enough. Weeks passed. The camera never came back. No new recordings. No masked figures and reflections. The attic stayed empty. The symbol on the door faded with time and weather. And then something strange happened. I started remembering things I thought I'd lost. Little things. Her singing off-key in the car. The time we danced in the middle of a grocery store. The way she used to fix her hair in my rearview mirror. Memories that felt stolen suddenly returned. Like birds that had flown too far, but still knew the way home. I repaired the garage. Took down the clutter, cleaned the tools, replaced the broken light. I even threw out the cursed casserole. Yes, I had kept it. Yes, I am ashamed. One night, I found her standing in the kitchen, staring at an old photo stuck to the fridge with a novelty magnet shaped like a pickle. It was us. Young. Happy. Real. I didn't know this still existed, she whispered. It almost didn't, I said. And I meant it. We didn't fall back in love, not immediately. But we began again. Not from scratch, but from scars. And sometimes, that's better. Because now we knew what we were fighting for. The past didn't own us anymore. The future did. And for the first time in 15 years, I didn't feel like a man who'd been left behind. I felt like someone who had come back.